Now, the Maharashtra politics in general and the Mumbai city in particular has been on the boil since last 1 week. What the last week has entailed is massive protests which were spearheaded by Manoj Jarange Patil and his thousands of fellow activists and protesters who had gathered at the Azad Maidan in Mumbai. All they were demanding was the inclusion of Maratha community into the reserved categories so that the members of the Maratha community can avail the benefits of reservation in jobs and higher education. Now, Manoj Jarange Patil, who hails from rural Jalna district, has been a Maratha himself, and he has become a staunch advocate for inclusion of Marathas into the reserved categories. Now, in this particular protest which he was holding at the Azad Maidan in Mumbai, out of all the major demands, two very important major demands that we need to cater to today. The first major demand he was putting forward was the implementation of Hyderabad Gazetteer and the Satara Gazetteer. And the second major demand which was put forward by him was the issue of Kunbi caste certificates to the Marathas. The compounding effect of the demand 1 and the demand 2 will lead to or the facilitation of inclusion of Marathas into the other backward classes communities, so that the Marathas will be able to avail the benefits within the broader umbrella of OBCs or the other backward caste. Now, what we need to understand over here is that what do we mean by Hyderabad Gazette or the Satara Gazette, and how does the Kunbi caste is linked to the Maratha? Is the Maratha caste has evolved from the Kunbi caste or vice versa? This is what we are going to explore in this today's lecture. Hello viewers, my name is Ritan and today we are going to discuss one of the most complex issues of our times, which is the Marathas' demand to be getting included into the reserved categories. Now, to understand the various nuances and the complex layers associated with this matter, we need to explore three broader dimensions of this particular topic. The first dimension being the legal landscape in which the reservation system in the state of Maharashtra exists. Here we'll try to understand that out of the total pie of the reservation, how these reservations is attributed to various other vulnerable communities. And secondly, we'll try to explore that what limitations has the Supreme Court of our country has imposed on the government of Maharashtra so that they could not distribute the spoils of the reservation to various communities. The second major dimension that we need to explore over here is the social milieu in which the Maratha caste exists in the present day Maharashtra. Here we'll try to analyze and appreciate that what is the present status of Maratha community as a whole in the state of Maharashtra, and also we'll try to delve into the social evolution of Maratha as a caste, and here we'll try to bring in the Kunbi caste and the Hyderabad and the Satara Gazette. And the third major dimension that we are trying to explore over here is the core reason behind which the entire Maratha community has gathered or coalesced together for demanding the reservation for the Maratha community. And ultimately, we'll try to also analyze that is the reservation the silver bullet through which all the ailments of the community can be wiped out. This is what we are going to discuss in the final part of the analysis. So now let's start with the discussion and let's come to the first core dimension that we wanted to explore. That is the legal landscape in which the reservation is existing in the Maharashtra government. Now, as we know that the constitution of our country obligates both the central government and the state governments to provide such policies for the welfare of vulnerable communities. The vulnerable communities might be the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, socio and economically backward classes who are also known as OBCs, and the minorities. Now, in pursuance of such affirmative policies which the state and the central government has to pursue, various state governments has provided for reservations to all these vulnerable communities. Now, the status of reservation in the state of Maharashtra stands in the following manner. So, in the present day Maharashtra, out of the total seats which are there, either be it for the job or for the higher education, roughly 62% are reserved for various categories. Now, let me point it out one by one. 13% reservation goes for the scheduled caste, 7% for the scheduled tribes. The third and the most important community from today's lecture's point of view is the OBC. OBC accounts for 19% of the reservation. And apart from it, there are several smaller groupings or social groupings which comprises of the Vimukta Jati, nomadic tribes, B, C and D, and special certain backward classes which accounts for 13%. And also, as a top up, there is 10% of reservation for the economically and weaker sections. If you will add it, it will add up to 62% of the total seats which has been put forward by the state government. Now, I would like to remind you over here one very important judgment by the Supreme Court of our country. That is the Indra Sawhney judgment of 1991. In that judgment, Supreme Court had categorically mentioned that in providing for reservations for the socioeconomically backward classes, SCs and STs, the total pool of the reservation should not exceed the Lakshman Rekha of 50%. Which means that even if you are trying to provide for reservations for various SCBCs and SCs and STs, your total pool of reservation should never cross 50%. However, in case of Maharashtra, it was already 52%. And in this backdrop, whatever the demands which has been put forward by the Maratha community, many a times the state governments had tried to provide for legislations for including Maratha community into the overall pie of the reservation. And in the last decade, it has happened thrice that various governments had tried to introduce the bill, but it was already, since it was 52%, it did not pass the muster which has been provided by the Supreme Court of our country in the Indra Sawhney case. For the details, we will definitely try to trace it while we will be discussing the evolution and the core tracing of history of the protest for the inclusion of Maratha into the reserved categories. Now, this was the legal landscape in which the reservation system functions. Now, coming to the social milieu of the Maratha caste. What we need to understand over here is that what is the present status of Marathas as a caste in the present day Maharashtra. Now, you will be surprised to know Maratha as a community, it holds almost 35% of the total population of the Maharashtra. Apart from it, 12 out of 18 chief ministers who has been there of Maharashtra had been from the Maratha community. Out of this, almost 75% of the total land holdings of the state of Maharashtra belongs to the Maratha community. Apart from it, almost 15% of all the IAS officers who are posted in Maharashtra, they belong to the Maratha community. What does all these data suggest? It suggests that Marathas have been a very, very dominant caste in the state of Maharashtra. Now, the same thing has been provided for various National Backward Classes Commission and various Maharashtra State Backward Classes Commissions as well. To name some, there were two important Maharashtra State Backward Classes Commission who went by the name of Bapat Commission and Khatri Commission. Both of these commissions, they held that Maratha as a community is extremely dominant and they cannot be included into the OBC or the other backward classes criteria since they are so dominant and forward caste as a whole as compared to the other caste which are operating. However, one very important fact that we need to note over here is that as we have noted that the OBCs were garnering 19% of the reservation of the total pool of the seats which are there in the state, and Kunbi is a agrarian caste, is also listed as a OBC in the Maharashtra, which provides for facilitation for the members of the Kumbi community to avail benefits in jobs and higher education through being a member of other backward classes. Now, if you'll try to remember, the core agenda of Manoj Jarange Patil was that he was trying to equate Marathas being equal to the Kunbis. However, there are certain set of people who try to distinguish themselves. There are certain Marathas who says that, okay, we are not a part of Kunbi caste. But what Manoj Jarange Patil is trying to do is that he is trying to equate that Maratha caste is equal to Kunbi itself. And to get into the core social evolution of these castes, we need to go to the pages of the history. Now, what had happened is that history is better reconstructed with proper written documents. And these written documents are the Satara Gazetteer, which was published in the year of 1884, and the Hyderabad Gazetteer, which was published in the year of 1909. Now, from the years itself, it is very, very clear and logical that it was published even before India got independence. So, the Hyderabad Gazetteer, which was published in the year of 1909, was published by the Nizam rule of that time. And similarly, the Satara Gazetteer of 1884 was published by the Satara princely state of that time. And as we know that the present day Marathwada, which comprises of 8 districts, earlier it was a part of Hyderabad state which was under the Nizam rule. And while the Nizam was ruling, Nizam took a comprehensive study of the areas which are falling under the Marathwada region. Here they tried to document the number of communities, caste, their income, their agricultural land holdings and various communities which stayed in the Marathwada region at that point of time. And in the same Hyderabad Gazette, it noted that Marathas were classified as Kunbis. Yes, these are the same Kunbis who are now enrolled as the other backward classes in the Maharashtra state. So the Hyderabad Gazette of 1909, it provided that Maharashtras were Kunbis. Now let us go back to the even older document of Satara Gazette, which was published by the Satara princely state. Now Satara Gazette of 1884, it also held proper land records and documentation of various communities and their agricultural practices. And you will be surprised to know that during that time, there was no name or the mention of the name Marathas, and all the members who were trying to stay in that particular area were classified as Kunbis itself. Now, why it is important? It is very important because earlier, whenever there has been instances of inclusion of Maratha community into the reserved category, what various governments had did is that out of the several categories which are present there in the reservation matrix, they tried to create a separate quota for the Marathas, which were outside the ambit of OBCs. Now, what Manoj Jarange Patil did in this particular case is that he hit the nub of the issue. He did a very smart move with respect to that if we'll do that, Marathas are equated with Kunbis, and this is what the historical documents are also suggesting. And the same is happening in today's politics and the protest which is going on in the Maharashtra in Mumbai as well. And this is what has been suggested by the Satara and the Hyderabad Gazette. Now, what has been observed by various critics and various activists and specialists who are studying the caste evolution in these areas is that as soon as India got independence and Marathwad joined the Samyukta Maharashtra or the present day Maharashtra as a state, people belonging to the Kunbi caste who were certain mobilized or who were having certain martial status or certain land rights, they started calling themselves as Marathas. So Marathas were nothing but a caste which emerged from the Kunbis, and Marathas was nothing but a status to those people who had certain martial rights and certain land rights, who were more forward. And as soon as the India got independence, many of the people who were belonging from the Kunbi caste, since they were having certain martial statuses, certain services under the government, they started calling themselves as the Marathas. And there were certain backward people who were still calling themselves as the Kunbis. And these Kunbis were included in the OBC list. Now, what we need to understand is that what changed in the previous 20 years, that at one point of time, members of the same Kunbi community who were identifying themselves as Marathas and they were classifying themselves as more forward than the Kunbi communities, now they are still wanting to go back to the Kunbi fold. Why are they demanding reservation now when they could have done it way back? And this is what we need to understand, that there are certain very structural inherent issues and the reasons which is forcing the Maratha community to demand reservation. Now, as the issue itself is so complex, and so are the reasons behind which is forcing the Maratha people to actually demand for inclusion of the Maratha community into the OBC fold. Now, the reasons can be understood in various fashions. The first reason is the geographical reason, which pertains to the geography of present Marathwad region. Now, as we know that Marathwad is comprising of 8 districts, which falls under the rain shadow area of the Western Ghats. So, whenever the southwest monsoons hits the Western Ghats, it tries to provide for maximum buffering of this particular Marathwad region from getting the excess of the southwest monsoons. And that is why the degree of monsoon or the rainfall which is available in this particular region is very less. Marathwad as a region experiences only 60 to 80 centimeter of the rainfall, and this particular region also experiences greater degree of monsoon variability. Because of these things, the degree of droughts which happens in these areas are extremely high, and it has been a constant recurrent event in the previous 2 decades that there has been string of droughts which has been brought into the Marathwad region. Apart from it, the geography is itself not to blame. There are certain important agricultural practices and the crop choices of the farmers of these regions which provides for various important elements of this particular region. Now, as we have noted that the rainfall in this region is very less, 60 to 80 centimeter. despite of having low rainfall, what the farmers of these areas are choosing to grow is sugarcane, which requires a greater degree of water through irrigation. Apart from it, add the degree of topography as well. The soil which is present at Marathwad is proper regur black soil, which although is very extremely rich in the nutrients which it has, but it obstructs the water percolating down and recharging the groundwater. And that is why this is the region which is a hotspot of extreme groundwater extraction, which is leading to fluorine contamination in the groundwater as well. The agricultural incomes has fallen to the lowest levels, and that is why the majority of the members of the Maratha who stays in the Marathwad region, they are suffering a greater degree of ailment because of the failure of the agricultural policies of the government. Along with the geographical locations, it has become a predicament for this particular region. The second important aspect which we need to understand to actually appreciate the demands of the Marathas so as to get included in the OBC category is the lower degree of job generation in the state of Maharashtra. As we have known that unemployment in our country has been a proper perennial issue, and through the various important policies of the government, they have been unable to generate proper jobs which are urbanized. So that before 1990s, when there were proper jobs, people who were Marathas and who were based in Marathwad, they used to migrate to the urban centers of the present day Maharashtra, which might be Pune or Aurangabad or say Mumbai. Nowadays, since the jobs are so less, people are not able to migrate, and then there is excessive pressure on the land, which is again creating frustration and resentment among the people. And that is why it is promoting more and more demands for the inclusion of Maratha community into the folds of the OBC. And third important reason, which forms one of the core important plank for which the Maratha community as a whole is demanding for the reservation, is the crisis of dominance. Now this is the same time period, that is the last 2 decades is the same time period where the fruits of reservation which were actually benefited the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes and the other OBCs were trying to get more palpable. Now the Maratha as a community, where they were able to see that other caste who were subordinate to them, now after getting the benefits of the reservation, now these people are getting more income, they have better life status, they have better living conditions. And the Marathas, who are supposedly the dominant caste of the region, since they are outside the fold of the reservation, they are not able to take the benefit of the reservation. And that is why it has also become an important compounding factor that they are being pushed backwards even in the backward caste of those areas. And that is why, because of these 3 important reasons, one being the geographic, another being the industrial jobs, and third being the crisis of dominance, which has compounded together and it has coalesced the Maratha demand to attain reservation benefits from the Maharashtra government. And this is what over the years, many times, several agitations and protests has been conducted by the Maratha community as a whole. Now let me give you a brief chronology with respect to how the Maratha agitation and protest for getting included into the reservation category has evolved. Now this particular demand for the protest for inclusion of reservation goes back almost 4 decades. However, the first major agitation was conducted in the year of 1996 by the Maharashtra Mahasangh, where they first time demanded that Marathas should be equated with the Kunbis. Now you remember this one particular thing that we have already established, that through the Hyderabad Gazetteer and the Satara Gazetteer, it is well established historically and sociologically as well that it is nothing but Marathas have evolved from the Kunbis, and Marathas are essentially stemming from the same agrarian rural caste called the Kunbis. So the Maharashtra Mahasangh in 1996, they had already identified that thing. Apart from it, various important chief ministers of Maharashtra, whether be it Vilasrao Deshmukh or Sharad Pawar, in the year of 2008, they had supported the demand of this particular thing. While there was a government of Congress and NCP in the year of 2014, then Chief Minister Prithviraj Chavan had promised the Maratha agitators that they will provide a reservation to the cause of Maratha protest, and they had provided 16% reservation. But ultimately, as it was over breaching the 50% limit which was put forward by the Supreme Court of our country, the Bombay High Court had struck it down in the year of 2014 itself. Similar kind of legislative proposals had come in 2018 and in 2024 as well. There was a proper legislative proposal in the year of 2018 where the Devendra Fadnavis government had tried to provide 10% reservation to the Maratha community in the state. However, it was beyond the ambit of the OBCs. So again, it was not able to, it was breaching the 50% cap which had been imposed by the Supreme Court of this country. And that is why in 2021, the Supreme Court struck that particular act. Now again, 2024 saw the Maharashtra legislative elections. So before that, again, the BJP government tried to bring in similar kind of legislation providing for 10% reservation. Now again, that is sub judice. And now in the year of 2023 saw the inflection point, and it saw the introduction of Manoj Jarange Patil, who shot to fame because of his hunger strikes for the cause of Maratha Reservation. And this is what ultimately it has been happening, that in the month of last week of August, specifically on 29th of August, he started the hunger strike on the Azad Maidan in Mumbai, and on the cajoling of the government, of the present government, he broke the hunger strike on 2nd of September when the government decided to agree to his terms. And what were the terms? The two important terms we have already noted. The first was that the implementation of the Hyderabad Gazette and the Satara Gazette. The second was issue of Kunbi certificates to the Marathas, so that the Marathas will be equated to Kunbis, and through that thing Marathas will be included into the OBC category. And as we have already noted that OBC is comprised of 19% of the reservation. So through these two demands, Marathas will indirectly will be able to contest for the 19% reservations which are there in the Maharashtra state. The other demands which were put forward by the Manoj Jarange Patil was that to take away or the withdrawal of important several cases which were put on, which were charged on various protesters or activists who were the supporters of Manoj Jarange Patil, and also to provide for certain assistance for those protesters who had lost their lives while protesting for the cause of Maratha Reservation. Apart from it, they had also demanded that there has to be a village level mechanism so as to scrutinize the documents which the Maratha people who are claiming for the Kunbi caste certificates, they have to provide, and there has to be village level scrutiny of that thing. Now following this thing, what the government did is that they issued a governmental resolution which provided the intention of the government. The intention of the government was very clear, that the government is trying to provide Kunbi caste certificate to those Marathas who have the documents to prove that their lineage or their family members had agricultural lands at earlier point of time. Through those proper documents which will be scrutinized at the village level, they will be able to get the Kunbi caste certificates through which they will be able to avail the reservation benefits. Now these is the core legal nuances and the socio-political nuances or the milieu associated with this Maratha protest. Now what we need to understand over here is that what is the implication of these protests. First of all, there has been counter protest which is going on in Maharashtra by the OBC communities. Now there are certain very important OBC leaders like Chhagan Bhujbal, Munde, etc., who has been claiming that by including Marathas into the already overburdened OBC community, it will take away their jobs, which is quite logical as well, since OBCs comprise of almost 52% of Maharashtra's population, and including Marathas into the OBC fold, it will take the entire population to 82%, who will be claiming reservation in the 19% sub bracket which has been provided by the Maharashtra government. So this also forms a very significant counter protest which is going on in the Maharashtra to date. And for the BJP government, which rests on the political plank of OBCs, since BJP's primary vote bank is OBCs, it is going to be very difficult for the BJP in the coming elections as well, and there are certain local body elections also about to be conducted in the coming years. Now what further question that we need to ask in the concluding remark is that one question that we need to ask is that, is the reservation enough to do away with all the ailments of the Maratha community? As we have noted that the reasons for which the Maratha community is protesting for the reservation is that there are certain agrarian reasons, economic reasons, and also social reasons of dominance. But do you think that just by providing reservations of 19% within the OBC fold, it is going to take away the chronic issues of unemployment, agricultural lack of productivity, and acute water stress which is pertaining to the Marathwada region? And to help me with this particular thing, I want you guys to actually comment your opinion with respect to this question. And lastly, I would like to leave this topic on this note, is that ultimately if we need to provide for a very progressive reservation system in our country, all the government has to do is that the state government, central government, and all the statistical organizations of our country has to come together, provide for a very comprehensive granular survey which notes the socio-economic status of every caste and not only Marathas. And then we should try to proceed with progressive distribution and equitable distribution of the reservation, so that the reservation system should be able to reach to the most deserving person and the most marginalized and vulnerable person of our country. So this was all for this topic. My name is Ritayan Guha. Stay tuned for similar such topics. Thank you.